So Tucker has fired back at Media Matters, and he did so in what is the most appropriate way. He tweeted out this statement: Media Matters caught me saying something naughty on a radio show more than a decade ago. Rather than express the usual ritual contrition, how about this? I'm on television every weeknight live for an hour. If you want to know what I think, you can watch. Anyone who disagrees with my views is welcome to come on and explain why. That's refreshing. Good for Tucker. Honestly, good for Tucker, because here's the way this usually works. Media Matters targets somebody over a statement that is objectionable but not career-ending, or they dig up a piece of old audio that nobody cared about 20 years ago, but now we're all supposed to care about now. And then the person is hit with a wave of advertiser boycotts, and then they express contrition for their comments, and then the contrition is used as an excuse to pummel them further because it's an admission of guilt, and then the person apologizes further, and they just sort of hope it goes away. This is Media Matters' MO. This is what Media Matters do. This is their favorite thing to do. And they and their allies will do this based on comments that, forget about objectionable, like Tucker's comments from 2007. They'll do it based on unobjectionable content. They tried to do this to me early this year when I made some comments about why pro-life people would not be in favor of abortion across the board, even if you knew that a person was going to commit crimes in the future. And I made a reference to pro-life people not killing Hitler in the womb, because the idea was that pro-life people don't believe that you should be able to kill people based on the possibility of them committing future crime. That was specifically directed at an argument in the book for economics. Folks on the left took it out of context, and then they tried to call our advertisers and manufacture outrage. This is what folks on the left do. So good for Tucker Carlson for not playing that game. Good for Tucker Carlson for saying, listen, I'm not going to pretend that my contrition is going to somehow alleviate your crazy. It's not going to. If you want to ask me about it today, come, ask me about it today. But if you're going to dig up old stuff that I said 10 years ago and then use it as an excuse to just try and destroy me as a human being, try to destroy my livelihood, you can go to hell. Honestly, good for Tucker, because this is what the response should be from everyone. You know what the response should be from everyone when somebody digs up a piece of 10-year-old audio? Honestly, the response should be, was it public? If it was, then the response should be, am I supposed to be deeply disturbed by it now? Maybe I'll go ask this person about that audio. And then if the person doubles down on a piece of bad audio, if the person doubles down, suggests that they were right about then that's a here and now problem. So I'll explain in just a second what this means for people who are not Tucker Carlson, like, for example, Joy Reid over at MSNBC. So Joy Reid, host over at MSNBC. And Joy Reid has a long history of bad blog posts. There are a bunch of homophobic blog posts and anti-Semitic blog posts, apparently, back from 2004, 2003, going back 15 years ago. And people were digging those up and using them against Joy Reid. And my initial take on Joy Reid was exactly the same as it was on Tucker Carlson, which is she shouldn't be fired. She shouldn't lose advertisers. If you're going to lose advertisers, you should lose advertisers based on stuff you say now, not stuff that you said back in history, because nobody has a time machine. We all have a Wayback Machine. We can all see what people said 10 years ago, but none of us can go back and correct the things we said 10 years ago. If we're given the opportunity to do so now, and we don't, that's a different story. And that's where Joy Reid went wrong. So Joy Reid was asked about all that stuff. And instead of her just saying, listen, I've grown, I've progressed, I don't believe those things anymore, I wish I'd never written them, which is the honest way to go about a conversation with any human being. If she had done that, that's fine, right? This is the way that we all deal with stuff that we've done in our past that we don't like. When we have a fight with our spouse, forget our spouse, we have a fight with a friend or an acquaintance, and we say, you know, I really didn't like what you did to me a year ago. And the person says, you know what, you're right, I'm sorry. That's the end of the story, is it not? Now, it's different if the person says, you know what, I'm glad I did what I did a year ago. I'm glad I smacked you in the head a year ago. Good for me. That's a sin in the here and now. That's not a sin in the past. You can't correct sins in the past. All you can do is express atonement for them or say that you've changed and changed your mind. That's all you can do. If you double down on them, that's a sin in the here and now. That's where Joy Reid went wrong, because what Joy Reid did is she said, that wasn't me. I was hacked. I never made a mistake. I've never made a mistake. Now, again, I've talked about this in a variety of contexts, this idea that we have now created a society where it is impossible to apologize for stuff that you've done in the past, where something arises from the past. We talked about this in the context of Kevin Hart during the Oscars. So you tweeted something 10 years ago. You did a comedy routine 10 years ago, and people now bring this back up to try and wreck you. And if you apologize, they say, aha, that's because you were guilty, which means you were bad. And because you were bad, we're going to try and wreck you. Or alternatively, you say, you know, I've changed. They say, well, you don't get to change. Sorry. If you didn't like that stuff you said, you should have preemptively come out and you should have apologized for it preemptively. And that's the take of a lot of folks on the left. Well, what that means is the only people you're going to get in politics or public life are people who are A, unrepentant, Or B, willing to preemptively, every time they change their mind, preemptively come out and say something about it and unburden themselves. We talked about this in the context of Ralph Northam in Virginia. I said about even Ralph Northam, a Democrat in Virginia with whom I heartily disagree on a variety of issues, including infanticide. I said about Ralph Northam that if Ralph Northam had come out about his Facebook in his yearbook in 1985, the one where there was a guy in blackface and a guy in a KKK outfit, and said that was ignorant and terrible of me, it shouldn't have been on my Facebook page, I feel terrible about it. The reason I've not commented on it until now is because I feel guilty about it. I wish people had forgotten. Now that it's raised again, it's opened old wounds that honestly I wish had been buried. That's not been my life. That would have been a good response to the situation. Instead, he said that it wasn't his. It had somehow sneaked into his yearbook. He gave the same answer as Joy Reid. Well, that is a sin in the here and now. That's not a sin 10 years ago or 20 years ago or 30 years ago anymore. That's a sin in the here and now. Like, here's the way these things should go, honestly. Somebody brings up an old thing you said. You either say, I agree with it or I disagree with it. And then you say, you know what, deal. Deal. If you're that offended by crap I did 15 years ago, take a hike. And if I say it now, then you have a right to be offended. But none of this 20 years later, I'm going to go back and dig up something that you did and then get super offended by it now. That's generally absurd because, once more, there are no time machines. You don't get to wreck somebody based on stuff they said 20 years ago without even asking them whether they agree with it now or looking at whether they were joking or whether they were on a shock jock show or any of the rest of it. Because let's be real, you're not actually outraged by this stuff. The number of people who are actually outraged by Tucker Carlson's bad comments from 2007 is no one. Everybody on the left, and again, that doesn't mean the comments were outrageous. I think if I had heard these comments in 2007, maybe I would have been outraged. I didn't know about them. But I'm not going to pretend to be outraged by something that Tucker Carlson said on Bubba the Love Sponge in 2007. Sorry, I have better things to do with my life. Now, if Tucker comes out today and starts defending Warren Jeffries, if Tucker comes out today and starts talking about how much he's in favor of 27-year-olds in arranged marriages with 16-year-olds, which is allegedly what he said, well, it's what he said on tape, with Warren Jeffs or whatever, about Warren Jeffs on Bubba the Love Sponge. If he says that today, then there's a reason to rip him up and down. But there's no reason to rip him up and down based on old audio that he has not even given a chance to talk about or defend or disassociate himself from. This stuff, the reason this is dangerous is because it can be done with pretty much anybody. Anybody who's been in public life for more than the last 30 seconds is going to have stuff on their record nobody likes. And if we make it the rule that you can't advertise on any show where somebody has ever said anything you dislike, ever, there will be no more there will be no more advertising on political radio or political television. It will, in fact, circumscribe the capacity of people to bring their political opinions to the fore. We'll be polarizing the public for no apparent reason. Listen, if you don't like Tucker, you already don't like Tucker. How many people additionally don't like Tucker today because of stuff that Tucker said 15 years ago or 10 years ago or whatever it is? The answer is zero. Everybody already had an opinion. All that faux outrage is faux. And this is faux outrage from Media Matters, and they do it professionally because their real goal here is not to make America better by cleansing it of its past sins. That is not the goal here. The goal here is to throw Tucker Carlson off the air. If they don't like Tucker Carlson, they should watch his show tonight. And if he says something they disagree with, then they should argue with him. But I will also say holding advertisers responsible for the 10-year-old sins of hosts is really gross. You think that Joy Reid's advertisers approve of everything Joy Reid said in 2003? They weren't advertising with her then. And by the way, if you're going to boycott anybody for Tucker's old comments, boycott MSNBC. They were hiring Tucker at the time. He was working for MSNBC when he said this stuff, not for Fox News. All right, meanwhile, the Democrats are full-scale embracing socialism. I mean, they're enjoying their ride to the left.